Yeah, I'm Huples Cat. Welcome to the first video in a very short series looking at the geopolitical changes and events that happened because of October the 7th, 2023.
It does seem that the civil war, has been quite fruitless.
It's not a civil war. It's a people defending themselves against a fascist government, which you are defending. It's not a civil war.
Well, the conflict...
It's not a conflict. It's a liberation movement fighting for justice.
Well, whatever it might be best called.
It's not whatever, because this is where the problems start. This is a people who is discriminated, is fighting for his rights. This is the story.
Gaza and his 17-year-old niece were murdered by Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, in 1972. In this video there's going to be no judgment, and there's going to be no pictures of dead, and there's going to be no exploited videos. To further try and reduce the radicalization that's occurring across the planet right now, all comments will be held until I've looked at them and I think they're okay to be put up. If you're looking to attack the Israeli government or the Palestinian government, this isn't the video for you. This video is not for that purpose. However, as I'm sure a lot of you have found out recently, it's very easy to get radicalized if you just look at one side of the equation. What I've noticed is there's very much a split now between pro and anti-Israeli government, or pro and anti-Palestine / Hamas.
صباح الخير، الساعة 4:30 الصبح صبح جايين المخابرات والجيش جايين يعتقلوا أيهم. لا حول ولا قوة، تفتيش جايين ياخذوا بطل، جايين ياخذوا واحد عمره 10,200 سنة. هلا بنشيكوا أيهم قبل ما ياخذوه. تفتيش. أيوه أيهم جايين ياخذوا. بلا طلع بلوزة معينة ياخدوها يعني مصورينها في بلوزة معينة. امبارح مسكوا ولدين عمرهم 15 سنة واجوا قوات المستعربون اخذوهم، وهلا اجين ياخدوا ايها. هذا هو اللي اجوا الساعة 4:30 الصبح يما يقلبوا الدنيا ويجي يفتشوا الدار عشان يعتقلوا ولد صغير. هذه حكومة الاحتلال.
It's been very difficult to know what's going on there.
What are they telling you?
Well, desperate. They're clinging to life literally by a thread. At any point, at any minute, anyone could be killed. They are in the south of the Gaza Valley, the area that is supposedly to be, safer. That's where the Israelis told people to move to, but they're still striking in Khan Yunis, Rafah, in the south of the Gaza Valley, everywhere non-stop. The few days ago, and even actually yesterday they bombed a bakery in the Gaza city. A few days ago, they did the same thing in Khan Yunis when people are queuing to get bread. Things are bad as it is. There's no fuel in these bakeries, so they can't really produce any bread. And if there's anything, people are queuing for hours. And then to top that, all of that, they bombed the bakeries. So death is everywhere.
These demonstrations are public outpourings of upset and anger at what's being perceived to being done to the innocent people in the Gaza Strip by the Israeli government. There were much smaller demonstrations against Hamas after October 7th. Since that time there's been three worlds. A world where the Israeli government is completely correct, a world where the Israeli government is completely incorrect, and a world that doesn't care. When I grew up in the 1970s, The PLO were all over TV doing terrorist attacks and hijacking planes and stuff like that. I'm a little bit too young to remember the Munich incident where the 1972 Olympics had most of the Israeli team taken hostage, and I believe quite a lot of them were killed. The history in a nutshell is that for 75 years there's been a cycle of occupation by Jewish settlers in Palestine, attacks, terrorism from the Palestinians against those people, armed fighting, and occupation of lands won by war. And Israel's been extremely successful, mostly at fighting. This video isn't to make you decide if it's A or B. The answer is A and B. Both suck in large degrees.
We're standing up for our interests and values, not shrinking back. Not in the face of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Not in the face of an intensifying strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific and around the world.
If the witness will suspend, and I ask that everyone again respect this hearing, we will suspend until the room is cleared.
Is calling for a ceasefire. Shame on you all. The world is calling for a ceasefire. The American people don't want to support this brutal war. Stop the war. Stop the ceasefire now.
So there's lots of large demonstrations. The size of the demonstration depends on your bias.
कि अमरीकी गुलामी या अल्लाह के गुलामी और रसूल कुदरतुना अल कुरान दस्तूरना
dismantle the apartheid state and stop the war crimes that Israel's committing, and we say not in our name.
That spans 2 boroughs. We're live with the demonstrations that shut down city streets.
The bridge was temporarily closed to traffic as the crowd made their way across. We met them on the Manhattan side of the bridge where they shared their message.
Palestine! Free, free, Palestine! Free, free, Palestine! Palestine! Palestine! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Let us not forget that 1.5 million people marched in Great Britain against the Iraqi war, and the Blair government at the time didn't listen to them because Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and we had to destroy him. I have to interject and remind people there were no weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein had been installed by the CIA, and Saddam Hussein wasn't a good guy. But the truth of it was, before the war against Iraq, the final war, probably about 1 million to 1.5 million Iraqi women and children in the main had died because of our sanctions, stopping them getting things like antibiotics and baby milk, under the idea that that would somehow or other allow them to create weapons of mass destruction, because if we allowed them to have those products, they'd be able to create weapons of mass destruction.
In London, thousands marched past Parliament, calling on Rishi Sunak to demand a ceasefire. Organisers said 500,000 people attended the protest, though others are reporting that at least 100,000 people turned up. As with the other 2 protests, Saturday's march was peaceful. Just 11 arrests were made, and only 5 people have so far been charged with offences. And yet, that didn't stop the press from painting a very different picture. Here's how the Express covered the march. Ban jihadi hate mob, they say. And it called out protesters who shouted Allahu Akbar, the Arabic for God is great. But it's not just the media that's misrepresenting the protests. The government is getting in on the act too. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has held an emergency Cobra meeting where security services and police were asked to assess the possibility of a domestic terrorism incident following the war on Gaza. And afterwards, she gave this interview.
Well, first of all, let me explain what we've seen over the last few weekends. We've seen now tens of thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches.
Are you fanning the flames over the pro-Palestinian protests, Home Secretary?
So is waving a flag an act of terrorism or supporting terrorism? Possibly, depends where you do it and why you're doing it. What is definitely true is exporting money and weapons to have somebody kill people is definitely very terroristic for the people being killed.
By the hypocrisy of this,
two more people to hear from.
I'm sorry.
You have a chance. Well, I'm not sorry.
You
sit down.
I know you're not sorry. That's the point. The hypocrisy of this speech. The hypocrisy of the fact that what do you have? Can you please make a statement about President Joe Biden's speech? This is a clearly warmongering speech. President Joe Biden is calling for $100 billion of funding for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and we're supposed to just bundle these together and pretend like we're going to rush to World War III, and we're all just going to let Hillary Rodham Clinton sit here. Okay.
I'm sorry. You know,
yes.
This is not. This is not the way to have a conversation.
I'm sorry.
If you want to have a conversation, you're welcome to come talk to me afterwards.
You can sit here. Okay, right. You're gonna wait for me, right? Please, I do not believe you.
I will listen to you, and I will respond.
I do not believe you. Respectfully, I do not believe you. And the fact of the matter is that the American people's voice are what need to be heard.
Yeah,
because our president is not speaking for the American people, and neither are you.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion.
Well, then sit down. We've heard your opinion. Thank you very much. Now we're going to.
I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop intervening. I'm going to wait here. I'm going to exercise my free speech until I'm removed.
It's not free speech when you are disrupting everybody else's opportunity.
It is free speech. This is free speech, everyone. This is free speech. That is not free speech. This is people constructing narratives that are openly hypocritical. I'm sorry. The incredible hypocrisy. You tell me John Foster Dulles went with Eleanor Roosevelt to bring this Declaration of the Rights of Man. John Foster Dulles was involved with the CIA.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're brilliant in your historical
thank you. And the Pinochet regime. Please, could you please inform me about the United States involvement in these historical things?
We're going to move on.
Miss Clinton, will you denounce Joe Biden? Will you denounce Joe Biden's speech?
Not just yelling about it. So, Frank, I want to turn to you because you are from Uganda, and Uganda's 2023 anti-homosexuality act criminalizes LGBT conduct in Uganda.
He's trying to push us to World War III. Do you understand? It's not about Israel and Palestine. It's not football. This isn't football. It's not Team America.
Well, I'm sorry, but some of us are on Team America despite our flaws and our problems.
Yes, that's me.
Please sit down. You're going to have to do something. You can't take over the event. You have to stop right now. You have to stop.
Or what?
Wait,
I'm going to exercise my
every person on this
stage has risked their life, their income, their reputation, their careers, and what have you done other than stand up and
I need you to excuse yourself. Sir, you have to listen to me.
records against you any
You're
day
disrupting the
of
event.
the year.
I'll respond. What I have done is I have asked Hillary Rodham Clinton to denounce the president's openly warmongering, suicidal, idiotic speech.
And
that's what I've asked.
Answer, I will
that's
not
what
do
I've
that.
done.
So that's the end of our conversation. But I'll still meet you
I need your
outside. But you're
identification
done.
right now.
Okay, Frank.
Okay.
However, this time around it's a bit different. Social media is allowing the oppressed or the less powerful person in this, the Palestinians, to actually invade our spaces online and actually give their point of view. That was very much lacking in the Iraq War. We didn't really understand, we did not really hear what was happening to the Iraqi people, the innocents in Iraq, because of our bombs and our tanks and our actions. What is true in 2023 at this point, and this is early November, is that most of the governments of the West, not all of them, support Israel in what they're doing. And most people online get news feeds that support that view. There are a few exceptions. The UK national broadcaster Channel 4, I think, has actually been very good at producing documentaries and videos and news feed that shows both sides of this. They also ask hard questions of both sides, which is really important. Here now is Keir Starmer speaking and explaining why he does not support a ceasefire. He is the leader of the opposition in the United Kingdom and has been tipped to be the next Prime Minister because the current government, which is very pro-Israel, is not in any way at all popular for very, very good reasons, as you'll find out on a Thursday Fun.
Boris Johnson asked scientists if people could kill COVID by blowing a hairdryer up their nose after he watched a YouTube video suggesting this. The then PM shared the clip on a WhatsApp group, including government health experts and senior Number 10 officials. In a written statement to the COVID inquiry, Dominic Cummings accused Mr Johnson of spreading misinformation during the pandemic.
Due in large part to your own WhatsApps, Mr Cummings, we're going to have to coarsen our language somewhat. I apologise. You called ministers useless pigs, morons, in emails and WhatsApps to your professional colleagues. Do you think you contributed to a lack of effectiveness on the part of ministers and of the cabinet?
No, I think I was reflecting a widespread view amongst competent people at the centre of power at the time about the calibre of a lot of senior people who are dealing with this crisis extremely badly.
You may or may not agree with Keir. You may or may not agree with Hillary Rodham Clinton. That's not the point of this video.
While I understand calls for a ceasefire at this stage, I do not believe that it is the correct position now for two reasons. One, because a ceasefire always freezes any conflict in the state where it currently lies. And as we speak, that would leave Hamas with the infrastructure and the capability to carry out the sort of attack we saw on October the 7th. My second reason, which is that our current calls for pauses in the fighting for clear and specific humanitarian purposes, and which must start immediately, is right in practice as well as principle. The reality is that neither the long-term security of Israel nor long-term justice for Palestine can be delivered by bombs and bullets. Open-ended military action, action without a clear and desired political outcome, is ultimately futile.
But all this has happened before, and I hope it won't all happen again.
Senator, this Jewish woman would like to know what it would take for you to break your silence and speak out with a full throat against the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The U.S. is in bed with Israel in all regards. Mass taxpayers alone spend $130 million for weapons that Israel uses against Palestinians. This is only one of the egregious ways in which we are complicit with this apartheid regime. Please speak out for freedom and justice for Palestinians who are human beings and need you.
I have spoken out, and I will continue to speak out. I want to speak out in a way to be heard. Which part of the money?
The $3.8 billion that we give.
I am one of the very few who has talked about how that money should and should not be used.
Well, speaking up is one thing. Voting against the money is the only thing that Israel is going to listen to.
It's no surprise America's enemies are calling for a ceasefire.
This appalling situation has also been brought about because, due to the US position, the Security Council has essentially been paralyzed and has still not been able to adopt a resolution with an immediate demand for a ceasefire. Washington and Western Jerusalem have entirely other plans to wipe out the population of Gaza. Mr. President, I would like to ask the permanent representative of the USA a question. Can you explain why you oppose a ceasefire?
The Russian Federation has spared no moment trying to either directly or indirectly blame the United States for this crisis. It is irresponsible. It is false that we are responsible in some way for what is going on. No state has worked harder than the United States. Russia doesn't care about solving crises, humanitarian crises. It creates them. If you have any doubts, just look what's going on in Ukraine.
Ask the permanent representative of the USA a question. Can you explain why you oppose a ceasefire? Does this mean that the USA, as a permanent member of the Security Council, supports the doctrine of massive retaliation in Gaza? Where is your compassion for civilians that you so eloquently express at every Security Council meeting on Ukraine? And that's even though the lives of civilians in Ukraine are far from facing the same level of threat as Palestinians in Gaza. Or is it that you only think about those who are in the European continent and that Palestinian lives don't stir any emotions in Washington?
Want durable peace at the Holy Land. They need chaos in the Middle East. That's why they are discrediting those countries that insist on the immediate ceasefire. We stand for the establishment of the full-fledged Palestinian state.
What is different this time is not all of NATO is standing with America, and not all of America's friends agree with America. Turkey, Kuwait, Jordan, Bolivia, and quite a few others fundamentally disagree with this and fundamentally blame the United States of America for not allowing a UN-mandated ceasefire to occur. This is all before the documentation that will come out from Gaza showing what the IDF are doing in Gaza. There's already been some stuff online. Again, I try not to watch it because it does tend to radicalize you, but war is dirty, and this is definitely not a clean, targeted war. The Israeli Defense Force is largely using American money and American bombs and missiles and tanks and equipment to enforce a destruction on Gaza to root out once and for all Hamas terrorism, so once and for all the state of Israel will be completely safe from terrorism. I fundamentally think that approach is wrong, but who am I?
Dün Ukrayna Rusya savaşında katledilen siviller için timsah gözyaşları dökenler bugün binlerce masum çocuğun ölümünü sessizce seyrediyor. Yahu Ukrayna'da ölenler için gözyaşı döktünüz de Gazze'de ölen bu yavrular için niçin sesiniz çıkmıyor? Ey Batı, size sesleniyorum. Siz yeniden bir hilal Haçlı mücadelesi mi estirmek istiyorsunuz? İnşallah bundan sonra da bir gece ansızın gelebiliriz şiarıyla kendi çizdiğimiz yolda ilerlemeyi sürdüreceğiz.
ثانيا ما ذكره ممثل هذا البرلمان المحتل الغاصب يمثل أخطر أنواع الإرهاب وهو إرهاب الدولة. هذا ما يمثله هذا الغاصب وأنا أقول له في هذه الثواني ينطبق عليه المثل المعروف عالميا إن لم تستح فافعل ما شئت. عليك أن تحمل حقائبك وتخرج من هذه القاعة بعد أن رأيت ردة الفعل من كل البرلمانات الشريفة بالعالم. اخرج الآن من القاعة إن كان لديك ذرة من الكرامة يا محتل يا قتلة الأطفال.
President von der Leyen has shown her support for international law is less about the rule of law and more about whether she supports the victims or not. Uachtar Naharan has been very strong on this, saying she does not speak for Ireland. So Taoiseach, do you agree with the President, and will you raise at the extraordinary European Council meeting with President von der Leyen her blindness as to the rights and international law of the Palestinians in Gaza? Thank you. 30 seconds.
Just in relation to President von der Leyen, I just want to say once again that I think that her remarks in more recent days have been more balanced and have been more nuanced and have recognised the humanitarian crisis that's underway. The trebling of EU aid for Gaza is significant. The decision by one commissioner to suspend it didn't last for long, and also she's working very hard on trying to secure a humanitarian corridor into Gaza as well. And we'll talk about all of those things this afternoon.
Already an American boycott is starting across the planet, and it's not just in places like Jordan.
Hassan, a security guard at this Starbucks cafe in downtown Amman, was hired to help supervise the usually bustling store. But for 20 days, there hasn't been a single customer. He and his colleagues now spend their days in an empty building. the result of a boycott, as this former customer explains.
Before the siege in Gaza, Starbucks was full 24 hours a day. Now, as you can see, there's no one.
This famous Jordanian sandwich shop chain is no longer selling Coca-Cola to customers, replacing it with local beverages. It's a way of boycotting the US, seen here as an ally of Israel in the siege of Gaza.
I came in and ordered an orange juice in order to stop drinking Coca-Cola. But normally before I always asked for Coca-Cola.
The government doesn't do enough, and then it's up to the people to make a difference. And I think if enough people join together, they can make an actual change.
Among the other food chains facing a boycott is McDonald's. Throughout the evening, terraces and tables indoors remain deserted. For owners of these restaurants, franchisees of the American giant, the war in Gaza has real economic consequences. A Starbucks manager, who wished to remain anonymous, said that local staff were the biggest losers of the boycott.
The next video is going to look at the geopolitical outcomes of all this, what I believe is definitely going to happen, what might happen, and what could happen based upon the attack on October 7th, the 75-year history of this conflict, an American response to the conflict, and what's going to happen after the siege of Gaza is finished. I know this is a very emotive subject for most of my viewers. It should be for all of my viewers, but it is for me. I definitely fall on one side of this, not on the other. What I do know is when you fall on one side or the other just slightly, your YouTube and your Instagram accounts and everything else pushes you further and further and further in that direction. Confirmation bias happens. What I do know is what we all should be doing in the West, is we should be demanding a ceasefire. There's no reason at all why we can't have a ceasefire in Gaza, why the United Nations forces, mostly Arabic, could not then occupy Gaza and re-educate them like we did in Berlin in 1945 into being less radical, less violent, and there's no particular reason why Israel needs to continue to occupy the territories they do and put settlers in there. That should also be prevented from happening by the United Nations. There should be a permanent border. It should be agreed upon by everybody other than Israel and Palestine. Both of those chaps are never going to agree. We need to impose the border. We need to impose a peace, because there'll never be peace unless we do. And our silence of our governments in demanding a ceasefire is extremely telling. There are other wars going on right now where nobody's interested and the media lens is not looking at them in the West. This one is front and centre. Ukraine's trying to get back in the media frenzy, but most people across the planet right now are feeling very, very insecure and very uncertain. Even the people that believe what America and Israel have done is 100% correct, so there's no problems at all with what they're doing, they feel scared. This is definitely letting something out of the box that wasn't in the box on October 6th. The geopolitics of this planet have changed. This will have more impact than 9/11 on the geopolitics of this planet. So thanks for watching, I appreciate it. If you like this, feel free to give me a subscription. If you don't like this, feel free to give me a subscription anyway, because it makes me feel validated. Have a great day, and donate to the Red Cross. Toodles.
Why won't your organisation engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks, you mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
This has been a 2023 Wolfie Terrier production, looking to eat the cat food. Wolfie, eat your own breakfast.